Back again with more brand videos. Defiwind 2025. We're at the JP Neil Pride stand, and we got some pretty big dogs in here. I've already lined them up. Look, they're looking casual. These are professional actors. What a coincidence! Oh,
we didn't know you would be here.
Surprise! These are the two guys that have replaced Antoine Albo. No, I'm joking.
Still not big enough.
Yeah, as a combo, maybe we're like big and heavy enough. Maybe.
No, but you boys are the main guys now. Mr. Albo's gone.
No pressure.
You are. I mean, you know, he's a big.
We have to deliver.
You've got to deliver, so no pressure.
If I can be like, let's say, honest and maybe a little bit sentimental on this, then there's no replacing a guy like that. And to even like hear it as a sort of possibility, because I've been asked a lot, is sort of an honor. But you don't replace Messi at Barcelona, you know what I mean? That's the type of thing. Antoine is forever a Neil Pride legend, you know, and luckily he will always be remembered as a Neil Pride rider, you know? So,
it is like that. We talked about it on the podcast a bit ago, you know, that legacy will be there forever. Nothing's going to take that away. But the new boys are here. You've been here for a while.
I've been here for 10 years.
I'm going to say you've been here a while.
Exactly.
We're going to talk about stuff. We're going to talk about boards. We've got some interesting stuff coming up.
You have some good questions?
I have some great questions. Where are we going to start off? We start off with the slalom board and the foil board, because somehow I've heard they're connected.
You don't want to talk about our pro models?
We could talk about everything, but I think
this is Nico's because it's pink.
we actually already talked to Yentel Cares about the freestyle board, so I think we can safely say that that's been covered.
But it is pretty. You have to say it is pretty.
It is nice. They look good. I mean, we can talk about construction because, as far as I know, it's the same construction throughout now.
Yes. I don't know the exact layup. Maybe on the slalom board you have, you know, an extra patch under the foot strap or whatever. But the S-Tech construction is generally like as light as it gets. There's no paint. I mean, there is obviously a little bit, but I was shocked when I heard it can be 400 grams of paint on a board.
Yeah. It's percentage-wise, considering what a board weighs, you think, bloody hell, it's a lot.
It's a lot, yeah. How much is 400? If a board is 6 kilo, so 10% would be 600, so it's like 8% lighter. It's a lot, huh?
I mean, try painting a board at home with a spray paint. You will go through quite a few bottles.
I know you've done that.
Exactly, so I know what I'm talking about.
If you haven't seen his board making videos out of wood.
No, but about the looks. Look, I know it's not supposed to matter and performance, and we're slalom guys, and so, but it's by far the nicest looking gear on the market. So, and I think that's now like a universal opinion.
I can tell you.
No bias.
I can tell you. There's a funny story because when it first came out, this type of look. Maybe it was, you know, when they first started sanding and you started seeing the inside. I remember going to a shop and this guy was like, what the hell's this? It looks unfinished. Is it a prototype? I'm like, no, this is the new look. And so some people, it's interesting, but I think now, because that was maybe 10 years ago now, that sort of look is now associated with high performance, light, and I think it's understood now.
Yeah, and it's good to like see it in live, because online, on the picture or visualization, you can't really see the full beauty of it. So come to the Defi, come to King of the Bay, come to the shop, come to Surf Center and see it live.
Yeah, okay. Right, let's talk about these boards over here. Because obviously these are the machines that you will be using. We're going to start off with the slalom board. You can go next to the board because for me, to be pointing stuff out is going to be a bit tricky. But what is interesting about Maciek is, last year, you spent a year without a board sponsor. You obviously tried a load of boards, and now you've got JP boards. Is there anything in that?
Yeah, I landed basically on using JP. You know, I tried different boards, and some boards were good, but weren't necessarily suited to the sail. But in the end, like the pure performance of the JPs was what stood out, and yeah, I bought and sold quite a lot of boards last year to in the end, like kind of take from the family, buy them. I actually bought them last year, and what stood out was just like plug and play, easy, the easiness. You know, I I always have in the back, because when we test, we're so anal, excuse my French, about like, oh, it's like 0.2 faster, and yeah, I have a touch more top speed. But then when you race, like you're looking around, somebody's behind you, you know. So I always tell people, yes, the slalom board is probably the most, let's say, difficult board in the range, but it needs to be easy. And if you take a board from 10 years ago till now, the main difference is not the top speed. The main difference is how easy they are.
Okay.
You know, because we want to, you know how many heats I lost because I looked over my shoulder and the nose dig and I crashed?
Yes, I do.
You know?
I was watching that.
Yeah, yeah. I have a lot of them, you know, or things of that nature, you know, where if you have a board where you just push and nothing really happens, and you're just, you know, you're just sailing along easy, you can race much more efficiently, you know.
So again, going back a little bit, because we have talked about this again on the channel. I'm sure Nico's done it his, but pairing up a board and a sail, because not everyone out there will buy a Neil Pride sail and JP board, but actually they are designed to go together.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about that?
Neil Pride in general is the sail that drives the board the highest from the sails I tried.
Okay.
Which is really nice, because that's why Neil Pride has, I
So
think,
they've got
the
a bit of
most
lift, is that
low
what
end.
you're saying?
Yes, they have a lot of lift. For example, on the foil sails, now we all use Patrick foil. And I can use probably half a degree less than guys on other in the tailwing, than guys, you know, which if you don't need to create lift, you don't create drag, right?
Okay.
Because lift
So
equals drag always.
put your Patrick for a bit lower in lift because you've got lift from the sail.
Exactly. Or my sail doesn't have as much downforce. And with the slalom sails, it's the same. They drive the board really high.
Okay.
That's why they always had this amazing low end. You never get stuck. You never have this feeling of like, oh, I'm underpowered. You know, like in slalom, it's so like, it's funny when you think about it, but it's the worst feeling ever. When you start, on the start at, I don't know, 8 seconds, you sheet in and there's nothing.
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck me. You know, and you sheet in, there's nothing, and you just receive one guy roll you, and then you try to get above to get free air, and then another guy's rolls you, and another, and before you know it, you're last. And you're like, okay, now I need to be Robbie Nash jibing to even qualify.
Yeah.
You know, with Neil Pride, you never get that. You always have that positive little bit of extra backhand pressure, no matter how slow or fast you go. And
Those are the details in racing. You know,
Yeah.
like you say, it's not all just top speed. You've got to have those moments.
yeah, exactly. You always have pressure on the sail. Don't ask me how. You need to ask Robert. He doesn't tell me how the hell he does it. But it's but this is the characteristic of the Neil Pride. I remember from 2007 when I did Formula and I bought a Neil Pride because it was the best sail. I remember this always, this Neil Pride feeling. It's really specific. Therefore, these boards, they can be easy and they can be probably slightly lower than other boards. So if you pair it with a, so if you pair a Neil Pride sail with a board which is really high, maybe you're gonna take off, you know. But then you just need to probably put your mass track further forward, you know. So they are tested together, and it's really important that it fits. But at the same time, these boards are sort of plug and play, easy kind of regular boards. There's nothing outlandish about them, or nothing that it only works in a really narrow window. You know what I mean? They're they're all rounders, so it's really
So
fun.
talking stat, we got obviously Nico here, you here. Are you setting up your boards differently? Do you tune together? Like, have you ever used each other's gear? I mean, I don't know.
No, actually not. But I think most of the time it comes down to more or less the same range of settings. Maybe we're going to talk more about that on the foil board in just a bit. And you know, there is certain sail board combinations with different brands. That different sail brand works with JP, and same for the sail. But it's a gamble, you know, or you have to, like Maciek, get all different boards and then find that combination. And I mean, he probably also ended up on JP because it's just a perfect match
With
for the
Neil
near
Pride,
Pride sail.
yeah.
So it's always the safest to just do the combo. In terms of settings, I think Maciek is a little bit shorter than me. So for example, on the slalom board, I like to not do the, let's say, the normal stance, but go one screw wider.
What
in my
is the
stance.
normal stance? So
Well-
do you always have your back foot strap at the back? Is that a given or is that not a given?
Well, what I mean by normal stance is, let's say you have 3 settings in the front and 3 settings in the back.
Yeah.
So if you take 2 times the middle or 2 times the, let's say like this, 2 times the back,
Yeah.
then that's your normal stance, right? So what I do is I go in the back, and in the front I go in the middle.
Okay.
Is that what you do as well?
Depends on this board, yeah, and then on the small board I would go all the way wide for control. So basically narrower. I always say this. Look, if I want to jump,
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump. If you want to create power,
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump from feet around, hips
Yeah.
wide, right? But if I want to wrestle, if you're coming at me and want to wrestle, I'm probably gonna stand like this, because like this, it's way easier to tip me over.
Yeah.
And this is the same thing with, so narrow is creating power,
Yeah.
wide is creating control. And here I was running a clinic for 3 days, and one of the guys, every guy, like a big guy, 105 kilos, but every gust he was getting a little bit lifted.
Yeah.
I'm like, where are your straps? Oh, somebody told me to put them all the way back. I'm like, keep the back strap back for the lulls and for fin pressure, but move the front strap just one. And he was like, oh, game changer.
Yeah. It makes
You
a
know?
massive difference, doesn't it? It's
Yeah, it's huge. So generally, you don't want the stance to be, let's say, too wide by default. So the default stance I think is around 44 or something. It's gonna be the default stance is probably a light wind stance on this board, and then when you're missing control, you move the front strap forward. We generally like to be very connected to the fin. Only if I'm really just taking off, then I would move the back strap.
And then, of course, shorter people need to create a bit more leverage. So for shorter people, it makes sense to put them closer
Yeah.
together, and vice versa. If you're already tall, you create a lot of power by yourself.
Yeah.
So you might want to get some more control.
Yeah. That makes sense.
If we only knew a short guy that likes
I was
to
going
go
to say,
fast
I
in
have mine at the
Portugal.
back and then
Yeah.
at the back pretty much because I'm such a short ass. Just a question for people at home. How do you know where to put your mass base? What's your process of doing that? Do you just know? Like I was doing mine the other day, just ready for this race, and I'm like, there. And Alfie goes, why are you putting it there? I'm like, I don't know. I just think it's about there. Or is it like a suck it and see? You put it in, you try it, you move it. What's that process?
Yeah, it is a try and error process, of course. For us, it's a bit easier because, or especially for me, because I've been using these boards now for years and years and years. And then when we change something, the changes are usually not so significant that you have to move the base by 2 centimeters. You kind of go by your reference point that you know from before.
Yeah.
And then if you feel a change, that let's say the board gets too sticky, then you move it back a little bit, and the other way around.
And how do you choose whether the base moves or the boom moves?
It's a bit, yeah, I know. Where do you start, right? Do you start
Yeah.
with the foot
What-
straps? Do you start
exactly.
with the,
It's an
yeah,
interesting
exactly.
thing.
I like to start with the foot straps because first of all, you need to be comfortable in your stance.
Yeah.
And then it's a combination between the boom and the mass base. Generally, you can do, for example, what you can do is put the mass base really far back and have the boom low, so you get the board to fly high, but have a lot of control because you're close to the boom, and you kind of get the harness lines a bit longer with the lower boom. But yeah,
I have already answer. You start with the stuff that takes the most to trim. So you can't trim the foot straps in the water. I mean, you can have your screwdriver, but it's a pain in the ass, right? So you start with your foot straps, then the mast base on. I think it should be like a written contract between the shaper and the brand that the middle should be the starting position. But in many brands, historically, like our friends, the blue boards, historically on the blue boards you would put them all the way back, you know. But in JP, the starting point is generally the middle, you know. And mast base position is something that you can change in the water, and so is the boom. But the boom height is something that you not only use in straight line. It's very hard to jibe with the boom on top of your head, and it's very hard to, for example, pump with your boom on your belly button, right? So the boom you set more or less in this range between, you know, between the middle of your chest to your chin, in this what is it, like 15 centimeter range.
Yeah.
And then the mast base, as he says, you feel sticky, put it back. You feel loose, you put it forward. But you need to remember that this not only changes the board position.
Yeah.
Imagine you put it all the way forward like IMCO.
Yeah.
The sail angle
Yeah.
is gonna change as well. So actually you put it forward, your sail moves back, and all of a sudden you might actually create, it's a weird, like you're gonna feel weird if you put it too extreme.
Yeah.
And it's nice sometimes to put it extreme, understand the extreme, and then scale it down.
I totally agree. The other thing is, then you had downhaul, then you had outhaul, and you think, no wonder there is confused people out there, because there is so many variables. It is hard to kind of work it out. I guess you have to have some baselines to work from.
If it were easy, it would be called kite surfing, or kiting, or kiteboarding. Well, one of the three. Sorry, but
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Okay, I was talking to you before. You said, is it this board or the next board has shared some secrets from what you've learnt with the foil board?
yeah, the next board, I just finished testing the not the predecessor, but a nice name for it. The next
one.
The English bloke, come on, help me.
Next year's model.
Yeah, next year's model. And actually, we realized that the shape of the deck is something that is an aerodynamic feature.
Yeah.
Which we really mastered on the foil board. And actually, the deck of the new one is going to look completely different than what we've been doing for 20 years.
So that is interesting. And interestingly, that leads me on to you. Because I watch your windsurfing videos, I watched your video
Thank you.
on this foil board. And I've got to say, I was thinking, you had a few crashes on it. And I kind of walked away from the video thinking, wow, it looks quite hard to sail. Is it hard to sail? Because I generally watched the video, I thought, wow, it made me think, I don't know if I'm good enough. Is there anything changing with this board? Or is this the happy?
First of all, I don't know if you're good enough.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I can tell you now, I'm definitely not.
No. But you know what? I think it just takes a little bit of adjustment and adjusting the settings. So obviously, a drastically different concept needs drastically different settings, maybe in your foil, in the position of the mast base. We said before on the slalom board, relatively small changes.
Yeah.
So I kind of know where the mast base goes, etc. So with this, the tuning is a bit different. It's perhaps a bit further to the back because the nose is relatively short. And then you have to get used to it a little bit.
I mean, it's really short.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
looking at that.
But you know,
2 meters.
2 meters. Okay.
but you know what? There's a lot of people coming back to windsurfing from like 20 years ago,
And I'm short.
and they have troubles adapting to the new kind of boards, right?
Yeah.
That are, because the difference from 20 years ago to now is so big, and now we took a really big step forward.
Yeah.
So obviously it takes a little bit of adjusting, but what we like to do is be kind of on the leading edge of development and push the new concepts and push these things. And so therefore, and actually, when you, like, for example, you would think a short board, it's super tricky in the takeoff because the nose is stuck in the, but it's the opposite. It's super light, the takeoff, it glides through the water super easily. And therefore, once you get the hang of it, it's actually quite a comfortable board.
You two guys, obviously different sizes. We talked about this. Same setup, different setup.
Yeah, well, I let Maciek take that one.
Yeah, so as we were talking off camera a little bit, it turned out that he likes a wider stance on the foil because he's more, let's say, towards control. He wants to have more control, and I like a narrower stance because I want more lift. Also because I'm shorter. One of the guys from my clinic, he came here and he was like, how are you competing with those guys? You're smaller than all of them, you know? He's like, you must be the smallest world champion. And then we start checking, and actually Robbie Nash was smaller than me, but all of them were bigger. So So I guess I'm like, let's say, on the extreme side. I'm like the Ben Profit of slalom.
I'll take that.
Yeah. So if you see, I have my back strap all the way back, but my front strap all the way forward. This is my sort of light, medium wind setup. Then if it gets cranking, then probably I go forward, you know. But what you have to understand about this high level foiling is that, you know, in Formula One, how they talk about the tire window. Like if the tire is heated perfectly, the car is fast. And like the McLaren right now, it has the widest window of tire temperature.
Yeah.
Foiling in general compared to fin has a narrower window. So if the settings are right, it's insanely fast, it's insanely efficient and whatever. But if the settings are wrong, it's unsaleable.
Yeah.
And this board, it's a little bit, as he said, we like to take calculated risks because the upside of this board is huge.
Yeah.
But
you've got it dialed in.
yeah, but you gotta dial it in. So let's say that if you want to, if you want a plug and play thing, buy the other foil board, the free race foil board or the free ride foil board. You know.
Yeah, because you've got to remember this is the World Cup one.
Yeah.
Because you've got to use production boards.
Exactly. So this is a board which, which set correctly has an insane top speed potential. Also because you need to remember this is an aerodynamic object. This is no longer a planing hull.
Yeah.
This is an aerodynamic object with fitted foot straps and with some cutouts to get off and plane. And if you think about any wing, the aspect ratio is really important. The aspect ratio is the chord versus the span, right? So if you see the new foil wings, they're really narrow. The chord is really small and the span is really big. And if you think of a windsurf board, the chord is massive, you know? So the aspect ratio of this board is the best on the market because air starts sticking to the board here and gets released only 2 meters later. If a board is 230, it's 230. And any air that gets stuck to the board is drag. And that's why we have this thing here, which is taken straight from America's Cup, is because, number one, the worst thing you can have is air coming across the board. Shit, now I'm probably going to give some other shapers some ideas, but whatever. It's a production board. Everybody can buy it. Everybody can see it. So if you have apparent wind, which we are creating by going fast. So the apparent wind comes in like this. But you have the real wind. I don't know what's in English. Real wind.
The real wind.
True wind. Oh, there you go. Somebody's educated. That comes in like that. So the vector, the coefficient is sort of like this. So you have some air that goes across like this. And this thing, any sharp rail releases air. So a lot of the bad air comes off, you know. Ideally for aerodynamics, this would be way bigger, but we need to plane. Again, we need to have planing hull capabilities. And the stuff that doesn't get released gets channeled. So instead of going all the way across here, maybe it gets channeled and it gets released here on the cutout earlier. So you want to get rid of drag as early and as cleanly as you can. And when I saw this board, it made my, let's say, signature on the JP contracts easier, let's say, because I was so excited because I've been wanting to try a concept like this for years and years, because this is not it. When foiling came in, I started calling my nerd friends to teach me about aerodynamics, you know?
Are we going to see things get crazier?
I think so. It's just...
I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, well, you know, you see the stuff from... I saw ages ago, I think it was. I can't remember. Some real crazy...
Yeah. So the thing is that it needs to be functional because we sell it in the shop. So many times the brands, like my previous sponsor was always, yeah, but it needs to sell, it needs to look good, it needs to be this, that. You know, I'm like, yeah, but we want to win, you know? And here it's the same conversation. You need a sort of balance because we raise production gear. luckily we race production gear, because if not, it would be like free-for-all development race, and the
It's quite entertaining.
yeah, it would be super entertaining, but it would be a pain in the ass because you would need massive budgets, you know, and the budget would most likely win. And now we have to be, especially now that we have very limited amount of prototypes. I don't know how many, I was not part of the team, so, but I guess it, you know, you make like 3 or 4 prototypes a year, so you really need ingenuity, you really need efficiency. So maybe Nico can say about the process a little bit, you know. And it's
So I mean, you're new to the team. Who designed this board? I mean,
Yeah, it's
Werner, obviously.
Yeah, that's Werner, and then of course he has the discussions with us, with the team riders. What are you looking for in a board? And then also, you know, you see these features as Maciek just explained, and you kind of want to push them as far as you can, with the board still working and with this board still getting planing. So you look at the features that worked in the development, and you try to make them a little bit more extreme, sometimes way more extreme in some prototypes, depending how many prototypes you have available. And if it doesn't work, then you try to find a way around, like, hey, how can we keep this feature but still change something else on the board so that it still works, right? And that's sort of the process. And then, you know, we test it together. We see which board we line up with each other, which board accelerates better, which board is faster, which board is more comfortable. And that's how you get to the board, to the final.
We just had a presentation on stage, and few people were laughing because I said, and I stand by this, that Robert Stroy and Werner Gnigler are the two. I've been on God knows how many brands, like 8 or something, and in every one I was more or less involved in R&D, and these two guys are the guys that are the least stubborn and with the least ego, so the most open-minded, not to be pejorative, the most open-minded designers I've ever met. You know, you have an idea, they explore the idea, they have their own ideas, they want to try stuff, they're innovative, they want to, and it shows, you know. And I'm so excited to be a part of this and use this, because in the past, and not only my previous sponsor, but previous, I've had so many like fights because a designer has an idea and his idea is the best and this and that. Man, Robert, I don't know how many world titles he won, like 50, you know?
That's a lot.
27 of Antoine, 25 of Sarakita, it's already 52. Maybe Sarakita won some before Neil Pride, but yeah, just these two people, it's like 50 world titles, you know? He should be a know-it-all.
Yeah.
But he's not. He's the guy that is the most open-minded, and that's why he has 50 world titles, you know? And speed records and push forwards and, you know, all these like all these things. If you think about it, how different the wave sail is to foiling, whatever, you know. So these guys, they're just it's great. It's been a pleasure so far.
Question. Oh, this is a boring question. Fin or foil? You've got one chance. You can only choose one for the rest of the racing days.
I'm too happy-go-lucky. I love it all, man. I really do.
You cannot give that answer.
You know, that's it. You can't be on the fence. It's like a do-or-die question.
Does it include wave?
No.
Waves.
It's racing.
Waves.
Racing.
If I retire, when I retire, and if I live in Poland, I will have probably a foil board and a big sail and a small slalom fin board.
Okay.
And obviously like 10 wave boards.
Well, what are you doing here? What have you entered here?
Open.
Open. So you are okay. Well, fair enough.
Yeah, well, you know, as you said, you know, foil for light, fin for strong. Although foil and strong is also super fun. But if you know, if I could choose, I would prefer to have 30 knots of wind for the rest of my life and then go on the fin. You know.
But it's interesting because the natural thing is foil in the light.
Yeah, but it's really fun in strong wind as well.
Exactly, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
I think I was speaking to Patrice earlier, and he's like, the problem is now, you know, foiling at the top end. What you boys are doing? What speeds are you doing?
We go like 34, 35 knots
consistently,
on the course. Yeah.
And what you're peaking at, it's like nearly 40 now. Like
it's closer. It's like 38.
Which is freaking terrifying, really. This is the most extreme end.
Well,
For you guys, not terrifying.
You get
for me,
You go the more comfortable you feel, the easier you feel, the faster you go. This is what people need to understand. So many people go like, oh, I don't want the race stuff because it's difficult. We're people. We're like, yeah, we're same, you know?
You got to remember, some people work all week and then they go sailing at the weekend.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is we are trying to make this stuff the easiest it can be because it helps us in racing.
Yeah.
And we want to have fun. In the end, you think I do it for the money? I do it because I love it, you know? And I want to keep enjoying myself.
No.
Yeah, no, definitely not. So yeah. So it's we want to make it as easy and as comfy for everyone. And in foiling, I tell you, 23 knots of speed can feel terrifying, and 35 knots of speed can feel easy.
I can definitely justify that first one.
Yeah, but you know, you push your own barrier every time you go on the water.
Yeah.
And that's the same as he said for everyone, you know. And you get more comfortable at a certain speed, and then you take it to the next level, and then you get comfortable there, you take it to the next level.
It is like wave
That's what's been
sailing.
happening.
When you push yourself to go in bigger waves, then you go out the next time and it's like kind of relatively big, but not as big as today. You're like, oh, it is like that. You've got to build yourself up.
And the best thing you can do, at least for me, is like crash super scary and then realize it didn't hurt. You know?
That's a risky one, but yeah.
You know what I mean? Because most of the time, like your harness line will break, or you have this hook that opens and the energy disperses somewhere else. It doesn't go in your body, you know? So you crash and you realize like, oh, it didn't hurt.
Speak to Remy Villa.
Yeah, well,
Sorry, we did a chat with him yesterday and he's all slinged up. But yeah, no, I know what you mean though.
yeah, and I think it's like this in wave sailing, but I tell you, I don't know, at least my attempts at any difficult moves in wave sailing hurt way more than any racing crash.
Yeah, when you back off as well, it's almost as worse. Boys, we're going to talk about sales, but we're going to do that as a separate video. So stay tuned to the channel. Subscribe, because he's absolutely destroying me right now. Absolutely destroying.
Subscribe to me as well. I don't put anything out.
Please. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you do like that sort of thing, we've got this one up here. If you've missed that, did you miss that? Did you miss that video? Subscribe to the channel, then you won't miss any of them. And if you do like what we're doing, you can also chip in some beers.